Welcome to Inside Aesthetics, the world's leading podcast for injectors and aesthetic businesses. I'm Dr. Jake Sloan, an aesthetic doctor with over 16 years experience in facial aesthetics.
And I'm David Siegel, an entrepreneur and business mentor with over 20 years of experience in our industry. Our podcasts are aimed at industry professionals, and any information or advice given is general in nature. You should consult with a healthcare provider before undergoing any treatment.
You can also subscribe to us on Patreon for on-demand content for injectable and business education. I'm excited about this one.
Yes.
I've got my friend Nestor all the way from the UK on board. But first of all,
yes.
Podcast news.
Podcast news. It's all happening. Busy. Patreon content, offers, more partnerships. It's a hive of activity. There's always something happening. So this week I put up a video with one of our patrons, just doing a general discussion about their business, looking at financials, looking at do you bring on staff, when's a good time to do it, what metrics should you be looking at. Everyone's really taking a deep look at their business at the moment. So there's lots of questions coming up around that. So it was just a 20-minute general discussion that I think the listeners and our patrons will really find valuable. So these things are coming up commonly. So
awesome.
Yeah, I mean, standard kind of stuff, but that's the world we live in.
Excellent. And in my Patreon content for the week, I shared a video with Dr. Ada Trinidade. If you guys don't know her, she's an amazing Brazilian dermatologist, and she's got her name on all of the sort of older Botox sort of papers, and she's an expert in toxins, and she's talking about how to get the best eyebrow position, which is kind of really important for when patients don't get good outcomes, it's often their brow position.
Yeah, and it's also, for me, I mean, I'm seeing that the fashion of eyebrows changing all the time. People are doing feathering now, the fox eye stuff. People want flat eyebrows, arched eyebrows. So there's a lot of fashion involved with eyebrows as well.
100%. And do we have an offer to talk about this week?
Yeah, we'll talk about True Diagnostics. So they're a company that we actually had the founder of that company on recently on episode 260. 260. And Hannah's a biologist from Kentucky in the United States, and she's a founder of True Diagnostics. So they're a company that specialize in epigenetics. So they provide testing kits for you to take a little pinprick of your blood or your patient's blood, and they come back with a whole lot of information around how old you are biologically versus chronologically. There's exciting things coming in the future around looking at your internal organs and potentially some skin health stuff coming in the future and the age of your skin. So we've got an offer with those guys. So for people that are listening that want to get hold of kits for themselves, or you want to potentially become a wholesaler and sell them within your clinics, because let's face it, these regenerative discussions are becoming more and more popular. We have got this convergence happening. So I think that people that are on the forefront of riding this next wave are going to do really well for themselves. And these sorts of biological age tests and genetic testing are great places to start. It's like a Vizia machine for your internal health.
Kind of terrifying if it's bad.
Exactly.
We're going to do one.
We've got kits coming, so it'll be a follow-up podcast. So if you guys want to look at that offer, just head to IA Offers, and there's a code there that you can use, IA12, and it gets you 12% off their kit. So if you're interested in the aging process and all that regenerative stuff, then that might be something that would be interesting to you.
Yeah, as always, information at the bottom of the podcast description.
Yes.
Now, let's introduce my friend, Dr. Nestor Demosthenous. He doesn't sound Scottish, but he is. He's all the way from Edinburgh.
He's from Scotland. It's the Loch Nestor Monster. There you go.
There we go.
I love that. I've not heard that one before.
You
I've
have
had dexamethasone, demonstrous.
All right.
But
yeah, there you go. The Loch Nestor Monster. I like that.
So today's podcast is one of our Business of Injecting episodes, and you are in your new clinic, which is why we've decided to talk to you, Nestor. But how are you, first of all, and how are you settling in?
I'm really well. We've been in for about 3 weeks, and I'm falling in love with the place. Like, this is kind of where I've always wanted to be. So it's good to bring it to fruition. And thanks for having me, you guys. I've been looking forward to this for quite some time, since we scheduled in the diary a couple of months ago.
It is our pleasure for sure. Now, I know Nestor through the Allergan sort of fraternity, and we came friendly, I can't remember, probably pre-COVID, and we finally met about 2 years ago at Monaco, and we've become very friendly since. But tell our listeners, Nestor, about you, your background, how you got into this crazy world of injecting, and sort of what you do day to day and some of your KOL responsibilities.
How long do you have?
90 minutes.
Yeah, 90 minutes, go.
Yeah, right. So you're right, it is a crazy world of aesthetics. I started life off in trauma and orthopedic surgery. absolutely gun ho. Love all the power tools and the cutting, and that's sort of I think that's just the way my mind works. It's a very mechanical way to fixing a problem. And then I started aesthetics about 13, 14 years ago, really as a sideline. In fact, I thought it was heresy to make any money off my medical knowledge. So I actually called the General Medical Council and asked them, is it okay if I do this course? And they're like, sure, crack on. And it just grew arms and legs after that. It became every weekend and then every evening and every weekend. Before I knew it, I was doing 2 full-time jobs and one had to give. You find when you go into business for yourself, and I say business, we'll leave you the specialty of aesthetics for now, but you get more out of it, don't you? The harder you work, the more you get out. And that was quite appealing. The NHS being incredible here in the UK, but having its failings. So it was about quality of life. I made that decision to leave. And to be fair, I haven't looked back. I miss the trauma side of things a bit. I don't miss the hip and knee replacements that much, though.
Yeah, and the ward rounds and the early starts and the 12 o'clock.
What's the early starts? Now I've been up since 5, so you're still up early. You're still grinding, but there's something amazing at the end of the day when you're absolutely exhausted and you know you've been productive and you've taken that step closer, whether it's an inch or a mile closer to where you want to go.
Yeah, right. So where did the journey start for you? I mean, you've got your own clinic now. You were doing orthopedics in the NHS. So what was your first exposure to this crazy world that we're all involved in, and sort of who taught you? Who were your mentors? How did you sort of educate yourself in a time when education was probably not as widespread as it is now?
You're absolutely right. It wasn't nearly as widespread. I did a weekend course, which now we look back and think, oh my God, that's terrible. But the people who trained me up, they were fantastic. It was an ENT surgeon and his wife, a dentist, over in Glasgow. Weekend course. And they also had me bring in all my patients for about a 3-month period, and they would supervise that. So I thought that was fantastic, as opposed to, right, see one, do one, teach one, as we often learned in aesthetics, in orthopedics. So it was a bit of a mentorship program for a 3-month period until you felt competent to see patients on your own. And sad to say, back then, all we were treating, Jake, you'll remember, was nasolabial folds, marionettes, and lips. In fact, my first 4 mil case was exactly that. So I cringe at that thought now. We shouldn't be learning that on day one at all. But I think it was a sequence of events that worked out to my best interests. We had the Scotland Allergan rep present and supporting the teaching. So she kind of took me under her wing and just sort of put me on lots of different courses as we went along. I'd say it kind of just grew. It went off like wildfire. I can't even think about how fast when I threw myself into it, because I fell in love with aesthetics. It's incredible what we can do non-surgically. And again, it's that whole orthopedic mindset of, there's a mechanical problem and let's fix it. I'm all about the injectables. Skin's very important, but I love the procedures.
Yeah. So who were you working for? I mean, or did you just open up your own business straight away?
Just opened my own business.
Wow.
Well, so at the time, it was acceptable to visit different salons, and I'd walk in and put drapes everywhere and bring out my consent forms and my taking pictures and all that, and did it properly, but not in the most ideal settings.
Right.
And then quickly set up my own place within a year, 2 years.
Okay. So you were essentially subcontracting out of other people's businesses, built up your client base, your patient database. So that took you about a year, and then you made a decision. A
year to 2 years, and then opened up. I say a clinic. It was the size of the room I'm in now, in a business center where I kitted it out with a sort of sink and treatment bed,
right,
and just saw people when I wasn't working in the NHS.
Right. Okay. And what was the business plan? I mean, this is a Business of Injecting episode, so I'm going to ask you a lot of business questions. So, what was the business plan? What was the goal? I mean, you've gone from having this very safe existence in a public setting where you've got reliable income coming in. Sure, I know you're still working there part-time. You're sort of doing an intelligent stepping stone process where you're, not leaving yourself totally exposed by walking away from that reliable income before you've got your business up to full speed. But what was the plan? Like, what were you sort of envisaging for the future for yourself? Or was it just, let's just have fun and see where this goes?
Extra beer money.
It was exactly that.
Yeah, right.
It was, you absolutely nailed it, because I mean, as medics, we have no business acumen that's nurtured from young. We started much later on, and the idea was this is a little extra pocket money. This could pay for a holiday, and it didn't. It wasn't until I'd say probably about 3 years in when established a larger proper clinic and decided to leave. I thought, well, just before I decided to leave, I started having these crazy ideas that this might actually be a career. This I might actually throw myself into aesthetics. And at the time, I think there was 2, maybe 3 doctors in Scotland who had left the NHS. So very uncharted territory. But by this point, I already started to meet some fantastic colleagues and now friends down in London who had certainly done this, a decade before I had. So there was the support there.
Yeah.
From a business point of view, you thought, right, okay, so if I can make as much as I was making in the NHS, then surely that's not a bad move. It'll be a lateral move. And the clinic was busy enough to afford that. And it kind of grew from there.
Yeah. I just wanted to take a moment to point out that a lot of people listening to this or listening to other episodes such as this, when we're talking to people that have, been around for a little while, I wouldn't say you're one of the pioneers. You're not like not as old as sort of like Arthur Swift sort of generation, but you've sort of been there during the infancy, if you want to call it that, of the industry. And a lot of people will say, well, it was easy for you then. There was no competition. It was an easier road than it is for me today. And I think I just wanted to point out that I think it's very easy to look at a path that's been charted and go, it's easy. We've done it before. We've seen it successful. And I think we're kind of here today. We've got more competition, but we've seen what success looks like. We've got people to look up to. We've got mentors. We can see paths that have been laid before us that we can just follow. But to be one of the early adopters where you said there's like 2 doctors or 3 doctors in the country that have left, and the industry isn't what it is today. There aren't the same number of patients looking to undergo treatments. The training was hard to come by. You were making phone calls, even finding out whether this was something that would be even acceptable. So I think it is worth pointing out that it's something very brave about being an early adopter and finding your own way forward and creating a path for people behind you to follow. And I just wanted to point that out because I think we've sort of mentioned it before, and I think it is easy to kind of think, oh, well, it was easy for you then. But I don't think it would have been easy. I think it would have been pretty scary.
No, it's a steep learning curve as well. I mean, I designed my website, I designed leaflets, I designed business, and I had no experience in design or Photoshop or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it was kind of really proper grafting until like 2, 3 in the morning, doing all that. And at the same time, trying to upskill yourself as an injector. So there was a lot of things to consider. But like I said, I mean, I was really fortunate. I became friends with Dr. Tapan Patel, which I'm sure you both know really well. And he was fantastic. He's been an incredible mentor for many reasons, both in terms of getting business advice, what energy-based device should I buy, and most importantly, start off with the injectable side of things.
Yeah, I think we followed a very similar path, Nestor. And when I was, doing what you were doing in those early years, my peers in hospital thought, I mean, they had nothing against it, but they thought it was a bit funny. I was like the quirky guy who does Botox on the side. And, like you, I had no peers, no one to bounce ideas around with, no established courses. I had to, like you, build my own website. I actually encountered a bit of pushback, and in fact, some seniors had a real problem with what I was doing. They thought I was not serious about surgery because they found out I have a side business. So, like you say, like maybe not pioneers, but I think having that entrepreneurial spirit to sort of stick with it should be commended as well. So
definitely.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, leaving the NHS was, as you'll know, Jake, it feels like there's an umbilical cord there, and it was to leave it all together. And so, like I said, my passion then was trauma and orthopedics, and it's very much was, at least then, a boys' club. and you get a lot of ribbing, a lot of stick. It's a wonderful sort of camaraderie around it, but you're gonna get the piss taken out of you. And one morning, every morning there's a 8 a.m. trauma meeting. So I walk into the trauma meeting and my website is up on the big screen for advertising aesthetics. And I'm like, oh my God. But everyone like just took it really well. So I was quite fortunate that it was in good banter. And leaving, I remember saying to my consultant that, I kind of feel like maybe I failed in trauma and orthopedics. And he goes, don't be stupid, because you've just succeeded in something else. He goes, that's all. And I thought, all right, that's a nice way to look at it.
Yeah, no, that's good. Now, before we get into the topic of your clinic and I guess your journey with your clinic, tell us about the aesthetic market of Scotland and Edinburgh, because we've been reading some interesting stories that Scotland's the worst place in the world to get aesthetics. So what's all that about?
It is. We do love a headline. And to be fair, it's not the worst place in Scotland to get aesthetics. It's the legislation which is the worst place. And it's a shame. So we have Healthcare Improvement Scotland, which serves to look out for patients' best interest. Incredible. There should be a body designated to that. And there's a lot of other functions it has as well. And it was taxed back in, I think, maybe 2012, 2013, on the back of Sir Bruce Keogh, who brought out his report to say there was as much legislation in aesthetics as buying a ballpoint pen in the UK.
Right.
So the Scottish government thought, right, you know what? We should absolutely put some legislation in place. But in my opinion, they went about it in the worst way possible. They decided to regulate medics who were already regulated. Right. So I'm regulated by the General Medical Council, the nurses by the Nursing Council, and the dentists by the GDC. So they said, right, all doctors, nurses, and dentists performing aesthetics must do it in a clinic registered and regulated by Healthcare Improvement Scotland. So if I were to treat a patient in premises that wasn't regulated by the health board, I could be taken to the Procurator Fiscal. Meanwhile, a plumber can inject a 16-year-old girl, because 16 is considered an adult in the UK, in Scotland, in the back of a van completely legally.
Right.
So it makes a complete farce of it all that, what they should have done is regulated aesthetics as opposed to healthcare professionals.
Yeah, that's a bit of a weird loophole, right?
It's bizarre. I mean, it sounds like the UK law.
Well, yes, anyone can do it. Have a crack and see how you go.
Well, at the moment in the UK, in the rest of the UK, in England, you can opt to be governed by the CQC. So you don't have to be in a CQC registered clinic. So you're not really penalizing doctors, nurses, and dentists the way you are up in Scotland, penalizing in that you have to, fork out a ridiculous amount to be in a clinic that complies with the right sink, the right tap, the right ventilation. But meanwhile, your non-medics can run wild. And we've seen horrible things. Girl ended up in ITU with sepsis and almost died because she had a Kenalog injection by a non-medic.
Oh,
yeah, that's mental. Let's go into your sort of clinic history. So you were doing your little salon setup, and then about 3 years in, I think you said you established something a bit more formal. So tell us about how that run, and like, what did it cost? Were you renting? Did you buy? Did you have any staff? Like, how did that all run?
Renting. I was there for a couple of years. Buying again at that point, buying a building was not a thing or an idea. Because again, you didn't know how it was going to go. Actually, I told my boss in the NHS, I said, right, let's have dinner in 6 months. And if it's all gone Pete Tong, can I get my job back? Okay. Luckily, that went well and that proceeded. A few things led me to move back to Edinburgh. So I came to Edinburgh in 2000 to study. I did my medical degree, my bachelor's degree, junior doctor years over in Edinburgh, had a flat over here, went to Glasgow for my senior surgical training. So came back to Edinburgh, and at that point, I didn't really have much of a name in Edinburgh. I had a name in Glasgow, a bit of a name, and a little bit in London because I'd started to do a clinic down in Knightsbridge at the time. And then when I opened Edinburgh clinic, I thought, you know what, it's going to need to look the part. It's going to need to be in the city centre, just so that you kind of not fake it until you make it, but be impressive enough. And I was really fortunate in Edinburgh. There aren't as many established clinics. Glasgow is almost a bit of an aesthetics bubble. So a lot of people doing aesthetics of an entire spectrum of experience and how good they are. Some of the best clinics in Scotland are definitely in Glasgow. But Edinburgh had four great clinics and not much else. So it kind of felt like I came into Edinburgh in a really good time. And my mindset was, let's absolutely shout about aesthetics. I want people to know what aesthetics really is, because we have Glasgow, not to paint them all with the same brush, but maybe only way is Essex type mindset over in Glasgow.
Right.
Whereas Edinburgh, a bit more refined in what treatments they're wanting. They want to be a lot more discreet. And that certainly ties into my aesthetic mantra. So had a big event, invited lots of people. We got some other clinics involved as well, just to speak about aesthetics as opposed to talk about ourselves. Because I thought, let's make the pie bigger. That should be the strategy, given that more and more people were getting into aesthetics. Edinburgh has been referred to as a little London. So a lot of people either work in London and travel back and forth or look to London. So it was quite good that I was going down to Harley Street and doing a clinic. At the time, I was actually at Tappan's doing a clinic every couple of weeks. So that also looked good. And I thought, why go down to Harley Street when I can go and see Dr. Nestor in Edinburgh?
Yeah.
As we all know, Harley Street really is just the name, but I certainly played on it.
Did you struggle with, I know you wanted to do aesthetics and you left to do it, but did you struggle with the mindset of, bloody hell, I'm just doing a bit of Botox in someone's glabella, whereas I was fixing people's hips last week? Like, did you have a bit of an ego battle? Because I did. I definitely did.
100%. And in the first 3, maybe 4 years, I would always say, if I introduce myself, what do you do? I'm an aesthetic doctor with a background in trauma and orthopedic surgery. Just to qualify, because I think there's still misconceptions as to what aesthetics is. And we see it every day, don't we? We see patients who come in who've never had treatments before, and within the first 5 minutes, they will absolutely say, I don't want those big lips, or I don't want those big cheeks, I don't want, because they're not really sure what aesthetics is.
Yeah.
But on the psychology of aesthetics, it fascinates me how, despite that's on the forefront of their mind, they still come into clinic, don't they? They're still there because there's something very powerful and very visceral about what they're looking to achieve and what their concerns are.
I think the media does a great job in amplifying that message, which is the over-exaggerated, overfilled syndrome stuff that Jake and I spoke about in a recent episode. They highlight all of the things that can go wrong. Like, the absolute worst of our industry is always on full display, and the media love doing stories on it. But I think that they do know that good work is possible. I mean, you look at people like Jennifer Lopez and you go, wow, she looks good for age. Sure, I'm sure there's a genetic component for someone like her as well. But I think that people do realize that good work's out there, but I think there is a misconception around how prevalent it is. I think that people's perception is that the bad work's really common and good work's possible, but you got to work really hard to find it. I think that's what I perceive the public to kind of think.
Yeah, no, true. I think patients, understandably, don't have a sort of a detailed understanding. They see it as very binary, like, I either have wrinkles or I don't. I either have big lips or I don't. They see it as very black and white. Yeah. And, someone like Nestor does very natural but still total face work. So you can use a lot of filler and make someone look less saggy, but they look normal.
Yeah.
But I don't think the public would understand that. They would just think you'd look like a bloated balloon with 12 mils. So
yeah, I mean, you always see bad work, don't you? Yeah, bad work just jumps out. And people forget that there's some great work that they've not even spotted.
Well, that's,
and that's why I tell my patients, I said, people should look and think, you look well, full stop, not you look well, what have you had done? Because that's a fail. It's very much about, looking good. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, it needs to look effortless.
I like that. Look effortless. I might coin that. I might use that.
Oh, yeah.
But I was going to say, it's a good point. Like, can you turn that into a brand, into like a unique selling point that's what you do? Did you try and do that in your marketing or in how you spoke to people?
So I've been looking at the business side of things, I suppose, since 2016, as in the business of aesthetics and running a clinic and your marketing, your messaging, your SEO, all of that, because that's really, really interesting. And again, very fortunate. By 2016, I had integrated quite well into Allergan. I just become a mentee. Or maybe that was just before I became a mentee, but I was known to Allergan and got a lot of support from them because they saw I was doing well. And, at the end of the day, if I'm making money, they're making money too. And here in the UK, we have Allergan business development individuals who come out and help you go through your clinic. And so that was really helpful for me. And one of the things that a lot of people kept saying was you need to decide who your patient is. You can't be everything to everyone, which is smart. You need to effectively think, right, this is who I want to attract. But I think what I've done is I've put out a message of who I want to attract as opposed to a demographic. I've not decided, right, I'm going to get all the over 50s. That's who I'm going to get. It's more of anyone who wants to age well, who wants to look good for their years, who wants it natural. So that's sort of the message that I've been putting out. And I think that's effectively what I've attracted. I've had a few instances of people coming in wanting ridiculous work. But that's a few over the last 8.5 years since I've been in Edinburgh. People know not to come to me to ask for things like that anymore. So I've put this message out, and I was really surprised because looking at our patient demographics, half of our patients are over the age of 50. And then something like 35% are between 30 and 40. And we have a very sort of a smaller percentage that's your 20 to 30-year-olds or so. And they're predominantly skin because that's what I'm telling them they need, because that's exactly what they need. A 23-year-old who comes in and asks for Botox is absolutely getting denied in clinic. It's not appropriate. She needs to concentrate on her skin. So it's the message that I've put out there of who we've attracted.
And so what does that marketing look like? So I'm interested to know, the specifics of how you're actually conveying that message, because it sounds like you're conveying a philosophy rather than an ideal sort of target market, as you said. So you're not looking for females 50 plus. You're saying if you are on board or aligned with this philosophy, then I'm your guy. How do you communicate that?
So what I did initially, like I said, I came into Edinburgh with a good 3-4 years of experience in aesthetics. So at that point, Jake will tell you, you think you're the bee's knees, right? You think, right, I know a lot here. I've got a lot of experience. So I wanted to come into Edinburgh quite loud. I didn't want to shy away in a little back room. Hence opening it wasn't a massive clinic, but it was in the heart of the city centre. It looked the part. I hired a PR firm and I built the name of Dr. Nestor. So I built the person, Dr. Nestor, and the clinic was called Dr. Nestor's, still is, but not for long. We can talk about that as well, because that's a business move. And then we got me to, any paper that would listen, that my PR company could get me into. So we kept building this story of what I was about, this philosophy. And Edinburgh is a bit of a microclimate. It's not a massive city. I don't even know what the population, maybe 750,000 population. Not completely sure. But word of mouth is very powerful here. So I set out to integrate into the fabric of Edinburgh. We had this fantastic magazine called Ion, which was the lifeblood of Edinburgh. It was everywhere and everyone was reading it. So I got in there quite a few times. So this is, I think, how I got my message out there. My social media, while it wasn't strong, again, the message was of lovely natural results, and trying to educate people along the way. And certainly my consultations, they're 50-minute consultations for a big part is so they can educate me about who they are, and then I can educate them about aesthetics, and we can then find what best treatment strategy addresses their concerns.
And were you creating your own content? You said you hired a firm. How much were you involved in the actual messaging and the content that went out to the general public?
So we would sit down and work out a strategy together, what we wanted to put across. They would create the content based on those monthly meetings. And then I would sort of go through them and either, yes, I like this, or no, I don't like that. So it was very representative of who I am. One of my problems is I have to be in control of everything, or I want to be in control. I try, and I realize that you can't. You can't be everything. You need to hire good people. You need to hire smarter people than yourself around you in their field and get the best from them rather than micromanage. But yeah, that's how I started off with micromanaging.
I think it's always good to accept 90%. Because you're never going to get 100 out of someone else. Even if they think they're doing 100%, in your mind, it's never going to be exactly the way you would do it. So the sooner you get comfortable with that, the easier your life's going to be. The easier your life's going to be.
But effectively, it's this is our name, and it literally was my name on the door, and the buck stops with me. So any message that goes out there, I want to stand up tall and say, yes, I stand by it. Whether people like it or not, I don't care. As long as I've said it, and this is what I stand by.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you were bouncing back and forth between Edinburgh and London at Tappan's clinic as well. So how did you juggle your time, and I guess why did you do it? Because you're trying to establish yourself in Edinburgh, but then you're 300 or 400 miles south. So tell us about that.
So like I said, Edinburgh being a bit of a smaller London, but the best parts of London, not the scummy bits. And people in Edinburgh looking to London at treatments. A lot of people had treatments. So I thought it did well for building the brand of Dr. Nestor by going to London.
Yeah.
And I mean, just working in the same clinic with Tappan. Now, granted, I didn't get to see him that often on work days, but you absorb a lot. You absorb a lot about business acumen. You absorb a lot about latest trends in aesthetics. So it was benefiting my own professional development. The clinic, obviously, when I opened, I think I probably had 5 to 10 patients on the database. So I wasn't the busiest. And I had time. I decided, right, if I'm not going to be busy, I'm going to really focus on just developing everything else.
Yeah.
So I could go down to London for a day, 2 days, and then see all the patients I need to see in 3 days in Edinburgh in the week. I worked on weekends to compensate if I was away. If I started to get asked to speak at conferences, again, you'd compensate because I wasn't the best. In fact, this isn't in a showy-offy way at all, but I opened the clinic on the 11th of April, 2016. In the July of that year, so 3 months in, I turned over as much as I do in a day now.
Yeah.
And that's not that I'm making millions in a day now. It means that I made very little in that entire month.
Yeah.
But, that's great opportunity to throw yourself into learning, doing things, writing content, writing articles, developing your professional relationships.
Yeah, I mean, maybe Tappan wasn't a good example because he's amazing and he's a good friend of both of ours. And like you said, you're almost getting free mentorship and kind of training in a way, but by just being exposed to his clinic. But many people, and I've done this in the past, I've sort of spread myself thin and gone to other clinics or different states to work. And I decided it didn't work for me because I was like, well, how am I building anything here if I'm there as well? Like it doesn't seem to make sense, but you kind of got the extra bonus of being with Tappan. So I kind of understand that.
And it was very beneficial. Sort of eye on the prize being I need to build my clinic here in Edinburgh because this is my pot of gold here, isn't it? This is the life dream. And I saw it as a way of doing that was building myself up, learning. I was quite fortunate as well in that I was a trainer for Sinclair Pharma for Silhouette Soft Threads before I joined the Allergan faculty. And that got me flying down to London a lot and doing a lot of teaching. So I got to meet a lot of fantastic colleagues. Like I said, now I consider friends in aesthetics, which again, you then speak to people and everyone wants to share. And because I wasn't living in London, I wasn't a direct competition to them. So I think they welcomed me more with open arms than if I was sort of stationed right next door to them.
Yeah. So when did you hire your first staff member? And what did that look like in terms of who was it? How did you go about recruiting them? How did that sort of take your business to the next level? Because I think a lot of people out there listening to this are potentially injectors in a room somewhere. They're sort of single operators. They maybe don't have staff. But eventually I think you get to a point where you make a decision that this business that you're in is either going to stay as it is and you have no aspirations to grow it, potentially sell it one day, and you're quite happy making the money and investing it elsewhere. The business is not going to be this pot of gold at the end of it. You're going to have a saleable asset if you sort of stay sort of in that paradigm. So, you've obviously made a conscious decision to grow and bring on staff. So just talk to us a little bit about that process.
So first staff member, I obviously knew I needed a receptionist and someone to sort of run the clinic, answer the phones, answer emails, because again, you can't do everything. And I'd learned very early on, pre-aesthetics, that start as you mean to go on. When I first got into aesthetics, we didn't use CRM systems. I used the Google Diary. I used paper notes, and I learned from all that. So I started off with a very robust CRM system. Started digital notes. Knew that I needed to hire one staff member and then another. So you take that first step. And I'd spoken to a friend back in Glasgow who was in recruitment. His company had a branch in Edinburgh, so he put me in touch with someone there. She got in touch. Her name was Lindsay. And she goes, right, you know what? I've worked in Transform before. Transform's a big franchise that does a lot of surgical and some non-surgical stuff here in the UK. I've worked before for them, so I know exactly who you're looking for. I wanted it to be someone who was extremely friendly, someone who was very organized. They were effectively going to be the face of the clinic. When a patient walks in, this is the face they see. And she was really excited. She found me a few people. They weren't great. I didn't love them. Didn't think they would be a good fit. And I thought she would be a really good fit. So we had that conversation. There was a bit of back and forth, and she considered it, and she loved the whole aesthetic side of things. So I can't go into too much detail about that, but she ended up joining the team, and it was incredible. So for the first year, maybe, it was just the two of us. And then we started to hire more staff, more front of house. I didn't get a therapist until 2 years in. Yeah. And it was interesting with a therapist when you're starting with a new staff member, because they don't really have a patient database at all. And I suppose a bit of advice to all injectors setting up their clinic: you need a therapist. It's passive income in that you're not making the money because you need others to make the money. You can't make all the money yourself. And what I did to start with Helen, our therapist, she was part-time reception and part-time therapist. And in the times that she had free, I got her to create content for social media. I got her to go off and do different training courses on different cosmeceuticals, on different devices to build it up. Then the pitch that I had was when someone called up and wanted a consultation with me, front of house would say, do you know what? Dr. Nestor absolutely believes in skin health, and so much so he's offering a complimentary consultation with our head therapist, Helen. So when you come in and see Dr. Nestor, come and see Helen as well, either just before or just after your appointment, or do it another day altogether. And this is what got Helen busy, is because of this message and this story we were telling, and really sort of herding patients towards Helen. Helen's fantastic and knows a lot. So she's retained those patients. They come back for more treatments. They subscribe to skincare.
Yeah. And so what were the treatments that you were initially doing with skin? Was it just, peels, micros, micro needling? Did you have any devices? Like, what did that look like? Because a lot of people don't have the capacity or potentially being a little conservative with not wanting to outlay big money on devices when they start.
It's scary buying a device, isn't it? It's scary because you're committed for the next 3 to 5 years. And what if you don't make your money back? So we start off with microneedling. That was the only device we had. And I think I had a small Dermalux as well. So a little bit there, some superficial peels, a lot of skincare. And while we didn't have any, I certainly went off and learned about a lot of energy-based devices so I could then speak to patients about it. So it's responsible that even if I don't have them, I need to be able to educate my patients and advise them one way or the other. Bit differently now. Disclaimer, I'm also faculty member for Cutera Technologies. So we have a lot of their devices actually, because I love their device and their brand. But we have the Seeker RF, which is a microneedling radio frequency device. And I think that should be one of the first devices all people buying a first device should get, because it delivers fantastic results, because it will pay for itself. We paid for ourselves, our device within 3-4 months of purchasing it.
Is that a multimodality? Is that a multimodality device?
So it just does. It's needles that go in, radio frequency current that gets emitted. So it's not like your in mode that has a lot of different. It's a platform for different handpieces. This is purely just microneedling radio frequency.
So what indicates you're just doing collagen texture? You're not able to target sort of pigment with that, or you are?
There's some weak evidence that generally microneedling radio frequency can help with a bit of pigment, but generally it's all about neocollagenesis, great for acne scars, great for skin rejuvenation, stretch marks.
Yeah. Okay. And what was the plan to get that device making money? A lot of people buy devices and they have a really good rep that says, you're going to make a fortune out of this. Just look at this spreadsheet I did with the forecasting numbers on it. You're going to be rich. Let's go on holidays together. Versus the reality of this thing sits in the corner. Potentially the staff or the therapists don't believe in it. They're scared of it. How did you sort of integrate this so successfully? Because to pay something off in 3 or 4 months is quite remarkable. So how did you go about doing that?
So by this point, we had a strong skin database, skin health database with patients. We use a lot of the Zane Obagi and the Obagi skincare. So they are already of the mindset that they need to go through a bit of downtime to get to the other side and get better, clearer skin. And there's a trust element there. We had a strong enough database to market to in general. And certainly in Scotland, believe it or not, we see a lot of sun damage. We see a lot of sun damage because people dismiss the fact that you need to put sunscreen on because it's always miserable outside. They go on sunny holidays and they absolutely fry their skin. So we have a lot of sun damage here. Yeah. And microneedling radio frequency is a great way of getting that collagen back in. So we started to market it before the device actually came in. Got everyone trained up, including our front of house. So Katera came out and discussed what the device is, what it does, how to speak to patients about it. So they knew everything about the device minus how to actually perform treatment. And when you start building it up that way and then launch and start to book people in ahead of time, we had an event as well to showcase it. People can see it's not as scary. So it just helps to get people very excited about it.
Fantastic. Now that brings us on to, I guess, current day, and you've just moved. You said at the start of the podcast you moved about 3 weeks ago. So tell us about why you decided that you needed to move yet again, and how did you decide location? How scary was that? And tell us that journey.
So the last clinic, the one in Edinburgh, had 3 treatment rooms and an open plan reception waiting room and 2 bathrooms. Not massive. I think maybe 1,500 square feet, something like that. And we were renting. So when I signed the lease, it was a 15-year lease with option to break at 5 years. And I specifically put it 5 years in because I thought, do you know what? It's going to go one of 2 ways. Either it's going to really go well and I'm going to want to move, or it's not going to go well and I'm going to want to get out. Luckily, it went well. And I'd started filling the pot for a deposit to buy a place pre-COVID, so 2019. And it's a good thing I had because that kind of saw us through COVID times with all the lockdowns. We had multiple lockdowns up here. So it was always on the cards to move into Forever Clinic. Once we came out of COVID, started looking, and I had Edinburgh is a beautiful building, a beautiful city filled with beautiful buildings, very old historic buildings, most of them sort of B-listed buildings. And if you're in the city center, you're going to go for a townhouse. If you're out of the city center, you can potentially find a house. I thought, I want to find either this massive house sitting on some land, or I want to find this beautiful townhouse in the city center. And then I started looking, couldn't find any commercial properties, then decided to look at residential, found this beautiful 120-year-old, I think it's Victorian property. It's over 3 floors. It's got some land to it as well. And it's only about 20 minutes from the city center. So you couldn't have scripted a better sort of what I was looking for. It feels very discreet when you're on the outside because there's hedges all around it. Fell in love with it, but it had its issues. One, turning it from residential into commercial, getting approved for that. And then just the magnitude of turning a residential property that hadn't really been looked after for a very long time to commercial spec.
Sounds like a episode of Grand Designs.
Yeah.
Do you know what it was? I should have got them on board.
Yeah, we're here with our friend Nestor. He's gone £9 million over budget. How are you feeling, Nestor?
And 2 years late.
Yeah, and he has no hair anymore. Yeah, you're feeling relaxed. Yeah.
So going from identifying to actually moving in, how long did that process take? And give us like a snapshot into how you even go about that. Because, you know, I know nothing about design. I've never worked with an architect. I've never built anything. So tell us about all of that.
I've learned a lot along the way, like things I had no clue about. And this is what I said, like, get good people around you. But the thing is, making the right choices about who qualifies as a good person is a bit difficult. So in this August will be 2 years since I bought the property. We started to interview different project managers, decided to go with one who turned out to be not great, and yeah, cost me both time and money. We parted ways, then found another project manager who also had interior design company within their company, and architects, S&Co. They were fantastic. They brought on this incredible contractor called Francis here in Edinburgh. They've done a lot of the bar and club fit outs, as well as some Harvey Nicks fit outs, as well as some dental clinics. So big enough to take on the project. And in reality, our biggest delay was the council, because they wanted so many things put in place to make it commercial spec. We've effectively rewired, replumbed, replastered, refloored the entire building. So I thought, do you know what? There's nothing structural. It'll be fine. It'll take us 2-3 months to do. It took us about a year to get all that signed off before we could start the work.
Right.
That was started in January of this year. And in 4 months, they turned it around. And it's incredible what they've done.
So without getting sued, what was the problem with the other project manager? Like, give us some insight into what people should look for or not look for.
So they didn't have the experience for something this big.
Okay.
Their social media was fantastic with the projects they'd undertaken. So it just goes to show you, don't choose on social media. And not that we did, we did as much homework as we could, and their designs were incredible. But they were inexperienced with a project this big. They initially had me believe, and this is sort of a lot of my calculations came from this, that the project was going to cost a quarter of what it actually ended up costing.
Wow.
When I say costing, what they ended up quoting for at the end, sort of a year in with them, they then turned around and said, right, it's going to be X amount, which was absolutely, like I said, 4 times what they had initially led me to believe it was going to be, only because they didn't know. So once they started bringing the figures in, so it was his failing and inexperience, which led me to make certain decisions along the way. And then we had to just draw a line under it, realize, look, we've lost trust. Let's go to someone else. Did a lot of homework here in Edinburgh. Spoke to a lot of my clients as well, because they're very well connected, and they put me in touch with some great people.
Your experience with building clinics and fit outs and stuff like that. I mean, every project that I've ever heard of, including people building houses, the budget always is underestimated, like always.
Yeah.
But why is that?
Because things pop up, especially if you've got like a building that you're retrofitting. So I've seen the outside of your building, Nestor. It looks like it's an old castle, like something from Downton Abbey or something. So, old buildings, things move, walls shift. You've got, window frames that, you might want to remove, and all of a sudden the building's shifted. You've got old wiring that potentially could have, got water damage through it over the years. You've got old pipes. So sometimes you actually don't know what is actually lurking beneath, what you can see from the outside till you actually get in there and start investigating what's going on. Or sometimes even during the build as well.
Yeah.
Then you've got things like delays. You've got something that happens like COVID, for example, right? And all of a sudden all your building supplies go up, exponentially, because now you've got a demand supply issue. Wages go up as well. You get seasonal issues. So, for example, if you're doing structural work to a property and you got lots of rain, you're in Scotland, right? So, does that delay things? And all the while, I'm not sure whether you paid cash for this building or not, Nestor, but I'm assuming that if you financed it, you've still got mortgage repayments that are coming out during this period as well. So it's just one of these things that it never goes according to plan, and something to look out for. Is this thing called variations. I'm not sure whether you have the same language as used in Scotland, but things that you'll get like a quotation for a scope of work, and then there'll be like a disclaimer which talks about things like variation. So all of a sudden you think you've got this fixed price contract for this job, but then these things come up called variations, which effectively just go on top of the bill because they're like unforeseen situations. So it's not an exact science, really, especially when you're dealing with old buildings that you're having to, redo all the services. And the services, I mean, plumbing and electrical and things like that. When I was building, in the end, I got smart enough to bring in people like quantity surveyors. So quantity surveyors are people that can look at a job, they'll look at a set of plans and they'll say, I know exactly how much this is going to cost to build. I know how many sheets of gyprock we're going to need. I know how many screws we're going to need, how much copper wire, how much they understand exactly what it's going to take to build something. And they effectively can become your project manager, and then you do something called like a reverse tender. So they'll say, I know for this job it's going to cost 2 million quid to build this property based on all of this. And what they'll do is they'll present this plan to 4 or 5 different building companies, and they'll say, here are the drawings. Here's what I think it's going to cost to build it. Tell me what your margin's going to be. And then effectively you get like this situation where everyone's on the same playing field. They know exactly what they're going to need to use it. And then you're just working out how much this business is going to make from a profit perspective, what their margin's going to be.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the last thing that I got to when I was building the private hospitals, was bringing in someone like a quantity surveyor who could help manage the project. A lot of them are like qualified builders as well. So they understand, because when you're on there, like, you don't know what's going on. I mean, you hire a building company, you've got like a foreman there, but they're working for the building company.
Well, that would be my worry. I have no idea about building, architecture or design. And so how do I choose?
Yeah. So I mean...
Well, you see, David, for what you just said there, right? If I had spoken to you maybe 2 years ago, just that one sentence where, you spell out, this is how it's supposed to be. You're supposed to get quantity surveyor, or architects do a very similar job here in terms of creating that scope of work, and then you take it out to tender. I didn't know that bit.
Yeah.
If I knew that bit from the start, that would have saved me a lot of hassle, because I thought, right, okay, great. So I find an interior designer, they've got a project manager. Let's go down that route. So there's so much we don't know, as you just said, Jake. Like, how could you possibly know? I remember sitting in on meetings with the engineer, mechanical electrical engineer, the architects, the contractors, and it's like they were speaking Chinese.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't have a clue what they were going on about high rises and going in through this bit and the C47, and I'm like, completely over it.
Yeah. I mean, as I say to all my clients, I've made probably every mistake that there is to make. And so I've only learned these things from going through them myself. I think I built something like 15 clinics, 2 private hospitals. Like, you just learn from screwing up.
You learn. When I saw this place, so there was 3 families, 3 generations living in this in the premises, and like I said, it wasn't in the best of conditions. But I fell in love with it. I thought, this is where I want my forever clinic to be. Like, absolutely, this is where I want my forever clinic to be. And if someone then took me aside and said, right, this is what you are going to endure. This is the cost, both financially, personally, professionally, physically, mentally, all of that. This is what it's going to take to get to opening. Do you want to proceed? I don't think I would have thought it was possible. Like, I would have thought that, so it's a good thing I didn't know any of that, because we persevere. You hold a dream, don't you? And you keep pushing forward.
Did you guys find any sort of hidden problems that you just didn't have the budget for?
Masses.
And
like any dead bodies in the backyard?
There were no bodies found, as far as I know, or pots of gold. But back in the day, they had clay pipes
Oh,
taking the
God.
sewage out.
Oh, wow.
So tree roots obviously grow through that.
Yep.
They have lead pipes bringing the water, the fresh water supply in.
Of course.
So all that had to, So we had to change all of that. Insulating. So obviously insulation being a big thing and heat loss. The problem is these buildings
Double brick.
They need to breathe. They should never be insulated to as much as the council wants you to insulate them. The windows cost me like 40 grand to get them treated and insulated the way they're meant to be. And now we found a little bit of dry rot in a corner because now you've just replaced all the boilers, heating's on, and the place is insulated.
Yeah.
So perfect storm for that.
Fair enough.
Fun and games. You want to build your own clinic, Jake?
I have no interest. Genuinely, I have no interest. We need to build this podcast to make me more money, and I don't have to worry about that. So yeah, you obviously bought the building, but is that kind of seems a scary and obviously slightly risky process to, I presume you own your own house with your lovely wife and son, but also you've now taken a second property that for 2 years wasn't making any money. So, what sort of advice can you give to injectors in that sort of limbo of potentially wanting to upscale or grow, but kind of at that impasse? Like, how did you decide to make that decision?
So, what David said earlier about selling, I think, and again, I speak to a lot of people and listen to a lot of people and take from it what I find important. And my accountant said from day one, pretend that you're going to sell tomorrow. So keep your books in such a way that you're going to sell tomorrow to make it look good for that. And that's in the back of my mind that I'm going to want to sell one day. So if I've bought the premises, it either adds value. If I buy it as part of the clinic, it adds value to the clinic to sell. Or if I buy it as a separate company and then I've got this building that I could rent out to the people that I've just sold to. So it's about looking ahead at, and this is what we have to do. We need to look at today, the running of the clinic. So you need a manager who's on top of that and you're on top of them. You then need to look at next week, next month, next year, and in a decade's time. So I'm trying to do all that. I'm stumbling along the way. I've not made all the best decisions. I've lost money. I've lost time. But any insight that I can give to others to not make the same mistakes. But I think look and plan ahead. You need to have some sort of, we're going to call it exit strategy. My 10-year plan is to retire from all the things I don't like to do. Right now, I'm still doing a lot of the nitty gritty. I'm the IT man. I think one of the treatment beds is broken, so I need to drill into that and put the back of the bed back on. But in 10 years' time, I'm just walking in and I'm seeing patients and walking out.
Yeah.
And so, what does the scale of the business look like in the moment? So, do you have any other injectors working for you? Like how big do you want to grow your team?
Yeah, so the clinic right now is we have ground floor, 2 waiting rooms, a minor operating theater, kitchen, 2 bathrooms. First floor, 6 treatment rooms. 4 of them are laser rooms because I think devices are integral into making that passive money, so to speak. Photography room, top floor, we have 4 offices and a teaching suite. We also do a lot of research with Allergan, so a lot of clinical trials. So that also brings a lot of, it brings money in as well, the research side. But the idea being, right now we have a nurse who's my wife, Amanda. We've got Rona, who's another doctor. She's an aesthetic doctor. She does part-time GP, part-time aesthetics. And we have 3 therapists. So while we've got enough space and more rooms to bring more people in, I'm going to focus on getting everyone's list to about 85% full to allow that little bit of wiggle room. So that's my focus right now, is to get their diaries to 85%. And then we can then look to get each clinic room to 85%. With regards to the minor operating theater, we have a GP with a background in surgery as well. So she does lumps and bumps. She does a lot of GP stuff 3 days a week, mole screens. We'll bring a dermatologist in next year. Looking to probably bring in plastics at some point as well to do upper blephs in the operating theater. So therefore, all these rooms are now making money outside of me. At the moment, we're still 50% revenue is from me, which is good. It's better than it was before it was 100%. But ideally, I want to get that down to 20% in the next, I don't know, 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, 20% is the magic number. So, that whole concept of key man risk, which I'm sure you've probably heard of, but when someone's looking to buy your business, that's kind of the wild card that everyone's looking at, particularly if you're selling it to like a private equity firm or someone like that. Or I guess just anyone really. I mean, if you're responsible for that much of the revenue and you're going to disappear tomorrow, then they've bought an asset that's going to be worth a lot less the moment you walk out that door. And so 20% tends to be the number that most people are comfortable with saying, okay, well, if I buy this business and 20% of the revenue leaves tomorrow with Dr. Nestor, this is still a salvageable business and we can still carry on and sort of rebuild from there. But that's, for anyone that's listening, that's kind of where you need to aim to be at, is the business being reliant on you for 20% or less of its revenue, and it becomes a much more saleable asset. And saleable, and also the multiple or the sort of the return you're going to get will increase. The less risk, the more money. That's basically the simple way to look at it.
No, good point. So obviously you've got injectors injecting, skin therapists doing skin, GP and maybe plastic one day, but what about the regenerative thing that everyone's getting all excited about? Any new services that you sort of aren't doing that you might add in, or will you even do some wellness stuff, or will you have a GP doing hormones, or will you do, like other things, hair transplants? Where do we stop?
So actually on hair transplant, then I'll answer your question. When I opened the clinic in Edinburgh 8 years ago, I was also running down to London and training to do hair transplant surgery. So I did that for a while because that was actually good revenue. And it was just me in the clinic. So close the clinic down for the day and do one patient. And that was good revenue from that point of view. We stopped doing the hair transplant side of things. Regenerative medicine, lifestyle medicine is absolutely incredible. And do you know what? If I had another life, I would probably go off and do all of that. Like I just devour all this information now and read up on it. And I don't really want to practice it right now, but I'd love to get either a functional medicine doctor in or a lifestyle medicine doctor in. We have Dr. Trish, who does hormones, a lot of menopause stuff. She's a GP who's trained into a lot of the menopause health. She does it remotely at the moment because she lives in Newcastle, but she'll be coming up once a month into clinic to see patients. We're not as fortunate in London. I feel like you've got everyone doing, you've got every specialty there, and you can just call someone up and say, right, do you want to come into my clinic? We don't really have that here in Scotland. So finding the right person to come in to do functional medicine or lifestyle medicine is proving trickier. Ideally, I'd love a dedicated women's health doctor as well to do a lot of the feminine rejuvenation stuff, because that's really important. And it's something that I know Scotland's crying out for, only because we've dabbled in it before. I had a doctor for that, and she did very well. Yeah.
Wow.
I think that's endless, the possibilities.
Yeah. Gosh, when I come over to Scotland one day and visit some family, I definitely want to come and check out. It sounds like a phenomenal setup.
Yeah. Well, we've been talking about regenerative medicine on the podcast about how do we, one, I guess, as injectors, upskill ourselves and our knowledge, but two, what do we actually practically introduce into our clinics? And do we even do that in our own consults, or is it just a separate consult with a functional doctor? Like, where do you stand on that, Nestor?
Well, I suppose there's two things in there. There's one, the systemic, what you can do. So I think you've had Nicola on so far, haven't you? So Nicola's amazing. She's also my go-to science person. Whenever I read something, I think this is BS. I'm going to check with Nicola first. So, someone who's going to be prescribing, looking at blood markers and trying to optimize health, because that's amazing, isn't it? Optimizing health. There's a fantastic doctor in the States, Dr. Peter Tia. I don't know if either of you have heard of him. I'm sure you have, And if you've not read his book, definitely read his book. But I love this concept of medicine 3.0. Let's absolutely optimize ourselves and get into our last decade swinging rather than sort of crawling. So I'd love to have someone here in clinic doing that. From our point of view, and aesthetics, I've started to really dislike the name aesthetics because it doesn't really represent what we do or who we are. I can't think of a better name, and we're stuck with it now. The same way we're stuck with fillers, and filler isn't probably the best name for what we're using these products for. Having said that, what we can start to do, absolutely, things like polynucleotides. There's a lot of evidence behind polynucleotides. There's, I think, about 5 decades worth of research in polynucleotides. In Europe, my understanding is more in the last 5 to 7 years, it's come into the injectable form and into skin. In the UK, it's really in the last 2 to 3 years. We're using them a lot more. They're not the holy grail. I think they need to be used in combination with a lot of the treatments we already have.
Yeah.
They're not going to work by themselves. Exosomes are now starting to gain more and more ground and a bit more evidence. So I think there's a lot that's coming into aesthetics. I think we need to be ahead of the curve, but at the same time, also a bit cautious. Like, we never bring something in just as soon as it's launched, just so we can be first to market. We want to make sure it's safe and effective.
Yeah. It's an interesting discussion, isn't it, Jake, around, how do you bring these things into your practice? And, you're trying to be an expert, in inverted commas, in what it is that you're doing. So you're going to turn around and start doing regenerative health. I mean, from my perspective, a layperson's perspective, I mean, if I was going to an aesthetic practitioner, just even be able to have an educated conversation with a medical professional that actually is interested in, or has a basic understanding of, things like how important diet is, how important exercise is, how important good sleep is, and how that interrelates and correlates with what you're doing from the injectable perspective. So, I mean, I don't know if it's about going and becoming this, getting 1,000 more degrees in regenerative health. It's just about being educated. And as Minister's planning to do is bring in people, develop a network around you of other people that have got expertise in different areas of it, because it's going to be its own animal altogether. But I think, we're a human body where everything's interconnected. Everything that we do impacts another system in our body somehow. So I think it's just about having a general knowledge and understanding and starting to become someone that's different from all the other aesthetic practitioners that are out there. If you're a great aesthetic practitioner that also understands how all these other things fit into the equation, then all of a sudden you start to become a commodity. Sorry, you start to become specialized and not a commodity, and everyone else remains to be a commodity. What do you think, Nestor?
100%. I think at the start, David, you had said about competition. There wasn't that much competition back then. And that always brings to mind that I think there's always room for a good clinician. Like, in any city, if you can, exactly as you said, stand out from the rest and make a difference and be responsible with what you're offering, and be inclusive of everything as well, from the injectables to regenerative to women's health to just all of that. I think it's really important.
Yeah, 100%. Now, I've seen a walkthrough of your clinic on your Instagram, and I think you've shared another video with me sort of privately, but it looks amazing and it sounds grand and big and 3 floors. But how do you create a patient journey and an experience? That's something that I think a lot of clinics sort of assume will just happen, but I know that you've kind of worked quite hard at making it, a little bit luxurious and sort of little touch points here and there. So how do you go about designing that? And did you do that, or did your practice manager do that, or did your wife do it? Because I don't believe you did it.
There, Jake. So the patient journey, there are our mantra. We've got 3. Our mission statement is clinical excellence, an incredible customer service, and to be a fun place to work and thrive. So that focuses, I think those are the 3 pillars that I want to focus on: the care we're delivering, how patients feel, and I want staff to love working here, because then they'll give more in return if they feel like they're benefiting as well. With regards to that customer experience, what I'm trying to build is, I want this place to feel like a private members club, but not in an elitist way, I've got claim there. I want them to feel like this is their home of aesthetics. They can walk in and feel very comfortable. I've got 2 waiting rooms. The one really for people that are going to come in and get some treatment. The other one as a post-treatment room. They're not ready to leave. They want to sit and read a coffee and read a paper. We've got some lovely sort of coffee table books that I've just sort of spent a small fortune on, because I thought they were really interesting, and I'd sit and read them if I were sort of a patient here, or if someone has local anesthetic cream on their face. They don't really want to sit in a room with everyone else who's looking fresh face and about to go into treatment. I must have spent about a week picking out the perfect coffee mugs. Like everything has gone into the greatest detail because I want people to feel absolutely cared for, that everything has been thought about with them in mind, their experience in mind. We have two people at the front of house. One is the reception when they come in. She's, sitting in that chair all day, coordinating the movement of everyone in the building. And the other one's really more the hostess that takes people around, that maybe gives our long-standing patient a little tour if they come in early. So that patient experience gets them their tea, their coffee. And every bit of the journey, I think we have to respect. And I really built it on what would I like to see if I walked into a place, how would I feel? You can see behind me, I've gone for some very well, I suppose this is a painting, but some strong colors, some bold colors, but not really too feminine or too masculine, because I want everyone to feel very welcome. We've got, I think 19% of our patients are men, which is higher than the industry average, but maybe it's because I'm at the head, or maybe because I've got very pretty therapists and nurses and doctors who are working for me. I don't know, but we have a good amount of patients that are men. So I want everyone to feel equally comfortable and welcomed.
Yeah.
You kind of make things up. You listen to others. You try things.
Yeah. What sort of coffee and refreshments do you serve? It's a weird question, but we've debated this 100 times in our clinic. I still don't think we have the answer. So what do you actually serve?
So we've got little water bottles, 330 ml, because the half liter, people just waste it. And they're in sort of the cardboard type bottles. And on it writes about how important it is and the impact on the planet. So there's some eco-friendly water. So we brought that in because I think that's quite important, an important message to say. We do have, having said that, we've countered that with an espresso machine. It's a commercial espresso machine, but they pick up, they recycle their pods.
Okay.
So we feel good about that. We've got, what I'm going to do is a little skin aid bar, a collagen bar.
Yes.
So effectively, we haven't had the time yet. We'll sit down and we'll work out sort of different sort of mocktails to make using collagen drinks, different flavors, and maybe have 3, maximum 4 on a little menu for people. So nice refreshment for them to have, and then get in the mindset of a little collagen shot. So we've got that on offer for them.
Yeah, I think that works well.
Yeah, I like the idea of the collagen shot. That sounds fast. Yeah. So do you guys sell ingestible skincare as well?
We do. So there's 2 brands of collagen we sell. One is Skin Aid, and I like Skin Aid because I think they're one of the few that actually put their product through a bit of, let's call it clinical tests. Nothing's going to be as robust as we want it to be. It's not going to be a double-blind placebo-controlled test. But so I like Skin Aid. We also have Zenny from good friend Dr. Joanna Ward. Her collagen supplement's really good. They also have a vegan option, and we certainly have quite a few plant-based patients, so they quite like that.
Yeah. Interesting.
How have you decided what skincare that you guys stock, and how many ranges do you stock? Because that can get confusing and expensive to have too much stock.
Massively. So I suppose a bit of advice for people starting out when it comes to skincare: pick one and learn everything about it. And don't do it half-arsed. So we signed up to the Zeo skincare brand. It's big in the UK. A lot of colleagues that I really respect, they were using it. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to go learn about it, like it. There's what we call the Fundamental 5. So these are 5 products to get your skin ready or in good health. And that's the way it should be implemented. What I mean by don't half-arse it, don't think, well, do you know what? Just go for the cleanser and just go for the sunscreen for now and then later, because you're doing your patient a disservice when you do things like that. It's the same thing when someone comes in, and to get to where they want to go, they will require 10, 12 mils of filler, saying, well, do you know what? You can only afford 1 or 2 now. Just go for that. And then, that'll be okay, because you're effectively taking money off them. They're not going to get much of a result, and they're not going to be happy. So I think go in strong with your skincare, and it absolutely builds. Our skincare revenue is healthy, so much so that it probably saw us through lockdown. So we did a lot of skin webinars during lockdown, a lot of sort of virtual events during lockdown, and sold a lot of skincare through lockdown.
not a trick question, but just out of curiosity, do you know what percentage of your revenue comes from skincare sales?
Anywhere from 15 to 20%.
Great. Do you know you're like one of maybe 5 people that I've asked that question to that actually know the answers to that question?
Really?
Yeah.
No, I love the numbers. Like I've got time set aside at the end of every month, the last day of the month after the clinic finishes, I've got 2 hours blocked out to look at all the figures from the previous month. Like, when you know the game, you can play it. That's
the thing. Yeah.
This is how we make these changes.
Yeah. I mean, 15 to 20% is massive. You get 15 to 20% of your revenue coming from skincare, and that's basically revenue that's got like zero risk attached to it because there's not going to be an occlusion from putting skincare on someone's face. It doesn't take any of your time. You don't need any extra staff to really do it. It's something that gets overlooked. So when you say looking at financials, so you're pulling out your P&L, you're looking at all of your input costs, you know what your break-even point is, you know what your patient retention rate is. That's amazing. So is that something that you taught yourself? Did your accountant sit down and sort of walk you through the basics and, you know, on an annual basis, potentially looking at, I was talking to a client this morning about, let's have a look at your margins. Have you had margin erosion over the last year because of inflation, all of your input costs going up? So how did you sort of arm yourself with this knowledge? And any words of advice for people who are sort of maybe, I think there's I think professionals in general struggle with this. They kind of tend to shy away because it's something that's scary and that they haven't been educated in. So they therefore just keep throwing themselves into clinical side of things.
I think you have a genuine interest when you go into business for yourself. That suddenly you fall into a category of type of person who has some sort of mindset. So therefore, there's that curiosity there. And you need to be curious, and then you need to speak to a lot of people. Like I said, I was 2 Allegan business consultants. One, Dan Hopkins, absolutely fantastic chap. Jake, I don't know if you met Dan. No. He's now the MD of Alamere. So he's a really good friend, and he gave me some fantastic advice. And then Chris Gill, who's now heading up a lot of what the private clinic does here in the UK. So both very ambitious individuals. And so they taught me a lot and told me things to look out for. I'm still learning in terms of what to look at and how to look at it. And it's very difficult because, again, if you're working in the business and on the business, it makes it really difficult. So I've sent my wife off to do an MBA. So she should finish that. She's finishing that in February, March next year.
Oh, wow.
And the idea is that that's a massive asset to the clinic as well.
Of course. Well, that's awesome. Now, you mentioned your third pillar was happy staff. So how do you get happy staff? I mean, obviously providing a beautiful atmosphere and being a nice boss, but like anything more than that you can do to make them sort of part of the business? Do you maybe even offer a share in your business to keep them longer term?
That's a really good question. It's someone that I was speaking to a colleague of mine down south who does that for one of his doctors that he obviously wants her to be there for the long term. I think he offers her maybe 1% of the business for every year of service to the clinic. I've not gone down that route, and I probably won't either. For the mindset of, like we were talking about earlier, if you're going to sell, I think it becomes a lot trickier if you do something like that.
Yeah. You could always look at the profit share arrangement as well, which doesn't tie up you having to sell any shares or them having to come up with any money. But whilst they're gainfully employed in your establishment, that perhaps there are certain benchmarks that people can reach where they get a share of the profit. So that's something to look at as well, that it won't complicate your sales process at all because it's pretty much only there for the life of their employment.
That's interesting. With regards to our external doctor, she's contracted, and the therapist being here as salaried, and then they get a healthy commission. And I say healthy commission based on, I asked a lot of people what they do, and sort of I then ended up giving a little bit more because generally if I can give, one of our therapists said to me, she goes, you know what? She bought a new house and car, and she goes, this is possible because I'm there. I mean, in fact, our therapist makes just under as much as I was making as a registrar in trauma and orthopedics in the NHS. Which is ridiculous, to go show the state of what we were making on the NHS. And then I think team building exercise is really important. So we've instituted monthly yoga
Nice.
as a mindful type practice. Yesterday we're at this fair, and they've opened a new paintball
Nice.
village. So I thought we'd all love to do that. We did Tough Mudder a couple of years ago. So we do a lot of sort of team activities. I think something I need to remember to do, and I don't do very well, is to praise staff when they do well. I think I'm very much about the grind and keep my head down, just keep working. And, even setting this place up, I gave myself a very small pat on the back before I got back to work.
Yeah.
So I need to remember others might need that more than I do.
Yeah. So, something that I became mindful of, again, in the sort of later stages of owning clinics, was the importance of sort of one-on-one time with each of my staff. Just to catch up, once a fortnight, once a month, depending on, how busy you are and the nuances of your practice. But just catching up and having some one-on-one time with the boss. What's worked really well, what's not so good, what could be improved. Let's talk about this patient situation that was handled really well, or how could we have done it better? What's going on in your life? How's everything at home? Just that. You find that, those sorts of conversations just help keep that rapport, because as you said, you're in the daily grind. It's really easy to get complacent, especially when from your perspective, everything's going well as a business owner. And just having that connection to the boss is something that goes a long way, makes people feel valued. And you can also start to pick up on things, because quite often by the time you get a resignation letter, it's too late. You can't save that person. They've already made a decision. They've already gone and looked for a job and accepted a role somewhere else. And here's your 2 weeks or month's notice. Thanks for coming. I'll see you later. Whereas if you can nip something, if you can nip something in the bud when it's a 1% problem or a 5% problem, it's just something that niggles away. And then one day, something, they just snap and they're out. And for me as a business owner, that was always the hardest thing was, I'd find good people. How do you hold them? Because every time that person leaves, they're taking a percentage of your revenue when they go and work for a competitor, or they go set up their own thing. There's disruption, explaining to patients, where's this person gone? The whole dynamic, it just sort of throws everything up in the air. And it's like taking one of those, what are those little snow cone things that you sort of, you turn it upside down and all the snow falls down again?
Snow globe.
Yeah, snow. It's like someone tipping a snow globe up. Every time you lose a staff member, it's like someone turns that thing back over again, and it just screws everything up. So that's something that worked for me. So
I like that idea. We've got so my clinic manager Nicole. She's just phenomenal. She's absolutely, I've said to her she can never leave me. She's got the pulse on her finger on the pulse all the time. So she has regular meetings with them and the appraisals. But I quite like the idea of one-to-one time with the boss as well. I think that just makes it more inclusive, because it's really difficult. We start off as a very small team, so you become good friends.
Yeah, but then it grows.
But then there has to be that separation as well.
Yeah.
So, and then I think we've just taken our next step up clearly in terms of size and magnitude and all that.
Yeah.
Now we need to maybe change the way we do things to accommodate for that. Because what you did to get you here doesn't necessarily take you forward.
And also what you'll find is that the sort of the more complex your business structure becomes. So you've got an office manager now, right? So you're shielded from a lot of stuff. You don't, and by you having access to people on the ground floor still who are, don't mean that in a disparaging way, but the people that you might not, having a lot of interaction with on a day-to-day basis, you might pick up on something that you would not have known about because the person that tells you didn't tell you, or they forgot, or there was a reason why they didn't want you to know. And so it just keeps everyone honest without coming across in an aggressive way. It just helps to people know, oh shit, Nestor talks to everyone.
Yeah,
it just sort of keeps it just keeps everyone, what you've got not tentacles, but you've got your finger on the pulse with everything. You know what's going on. So anyway.
Cool.
Good advice.
Now, marketing and social media, what are your plans to kind of promote yourself? What do you think's working well on, say, Instagram? Are you guys going to get on TikTok? Like, what's your plan for advertising and marketing?
So I find it really difficult. I find marketing very, very. Who's the grandfather of advertising, something like that, said that half the money I spend on advertising brings in all the revenue. The problem is I don't know which half. So you kind of throw money at it. We ask patients, every patient who comes in, how did you hear about us? And 90% of the time, it'll be one of two things: word of mouth or Google. So because of that, I've invested a lot in our SEO. We have a fantastic person who does our MailChimp, Nikki. So she's fantastic at writing some really good solaces and newsletters. And she's currently doing our marketing. in terms of social media, but I think we need to change that a little bit, because I'm very mindful that social media is only a small set of patients that are seeing that. It's not all your patients. Like I said, if a lot of my patients, half of them are over 50, they're definitely not on Instagram.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of them aren't. I've been speaking to Rick O'Neill, heard the podcast that he did with you guys. So we've been courting, so to speak. They've come up with a plan for us. It's about, I suppose, initiating that plan. We've got ideas. We have this incredible laser from Cutera called AviClear.
Oh, yeah.
In fact,
Acne.
it's going to be a podcast. Yeah. For you guys to do. And we're the only ones in Scotland. We're one of the first in the UK to have it. And we need to be really clever how we market it, how we put it out there. The reason being, people, if they don't know about something, they're not going to look for it. Mm-hmm. So we need to make a strong name about that. We're also, right now, we don't have a dermatologist, so a lot of people might go to a dermatologist, so they won't be looking at it from an aesthetic clinic. TikTok's very powerful. A lot of your teenagers on TikTok, they suffer from acne, so we're going to focus a lot on marketing to them and educating them about acne. I think that'll be a smart thing to do. Edinburgh also has more private schools per capita than any other city in the UK.
Oh, okay.
So we've got a lot of parents of children in private schools who have acne. So we're going to look to do something with the private schools as well.
Awesome. Very clever. That's good.
Awesome.
Now, have you made any mistakes? Any advice, parting words for injectors of don't do this because I've made the mistake, and you can sort of educate them about what your biggest stuff up is in terms of business?
All of it. Don't do any of it. Don't do it and then do it. Like, God, I suppose it's just been too many mistakes along the way. I think it'd be easier to say, things that I found work really well. Have a good CRM system and when I say it's good CRM, you can book your patients in, you can then market directly to your patients. For example, what we do is every 4 months after someone's had a Botox treatment, they will get an email to say, can you believe it's been 4 months to the day? So every morning, the system runs a report and sends out to everyone who had Botox 4 months ago. They'll do it again at the 6-month mark. If patients haven't booked in, they'll do it at the 9 and 12-month mark for fillers. Skincare, they'll get an email for the big hitters, your retinol, your vitamin C, your sunscreen, to say, look, you've probably run out by now. Do you want to pop in, or do you want to order online? Click here. So I think these are things that I found help to improve patient retention, because it's easier to retain patients than to acquire new patients, and 100%. It's less costly as well.
Yeah,
I think.
What is your CRM system? What are you using?
So we're using Columns,
yes.
which is made by good friend Ascari Townsend, who's been in aesthetics for a very long time. He's worked in big chains. He has his own clinic. Very experienced, and he's got that type of brain as well that just sees things in figures. So he's done well to set up Columns.
We have had Ascari on the podcast. I can't remember what number, maybe 20 or 30 podcasts ago.
When he just had his funding pulled. Yeah.
Yes.
Bit of a stressful period.
Yeah, hugely so.
Any parting questions, business questions?
No, I mean, I think that, I've been really enthralled sitting here listening to your journey and, the successes, the failures, where you want to take the business. You seem super switched on and humble, and you've got some great ideas, and I'd love to visit your clinic one day. So thank you so much for your time and sharing your journey. And, I got a bit excited there. I thought we were in a consulting session for a second there. I thought, I just sort of had to bring myself back, but it was great. I love having these discussions. I'm super passionate about it, and it's great to meet you. And I'm looking forward to either having you out here in Australia for my annual beer that I have once a year, or come to Scotland and say hi in your clinic.
I've got one question, final question. When are we doing a training session? When am I coming over? And what does that training look like?
So we've got this beautiful building here to take advantage of. So anytime you want. Well,
because we
we'll definitely set it up.
Yeah, we joked, well, not joked, we sort of very loosely said, we should do a training thing when I'm in the UK. It never happened because really we didn't have a place to go to because your clinic wasn't built, but now we do. So we should talk about that.
We've got, like I said, teaching suite. We've got massive tellies on all 3 floors that we can stream different treatments. So yeah,
That's exciting. All
We'll
right.
record a podcast in the IA Edinburgh.
Yes, let's do it. A remote podcast.
Yes, let's do that.
Awesome. Well, mate, really good to catch up. Loved speaking to you, and it's great to find out that you've been a big success, and hopefully it still goes good. You have to keep us posted. And if you like, will you do a walk around so we can show this to our Patreons? You're in our Patreon group, but we'd love to sort of showcase what you've done and show it off.
Absolutely. So I will send you a link to a 3D video we shot on Friday.
Oh, awesome.
That'll be fun.
And you can post that up.
Perfect.
Brilliant. Thanks, buddy. Well, have a great day. Enjoy your Allergan meeting. I know you've got a meeting in about 27 minutes. So we'll speak soon.
Perfect. Take care, guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, buddy. For our latest news, follow us on Instagram at Inside Aesthetics Podcast. If you want to get in touch with myself or David, follow us on Instagram as well at Dr. Jake Sloan and David_Inside Aesthetics.
Join our Patreon for invaluable business and injectable education. Get access to our global community of like-minded professionals, live and interactive Zoom sessions, hints and tip videos, webinars, and more. Head over to www.insideaesthetics.com/Patreon for more information.